Jamar Chase, there is definite steam. You know, it was Penei Sewell, the Oregon tackle, penciled in to Cincinnati at number 5 for a while. That pendulum has swung hard the other way. Jamar Chase, there's now a feeling, is the guy. The LSU reunion between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And there it is, another mock draft with Jamar Chase going to the Cincinnati Bengals at number 5, and Sewell dropping down to number 7, biting kneecaps for Dan Campbell in Detroit.
Right. Well, I could see that. I mean, you know, again, that's Dan Campbell, Anthony Lynn. They'd believe like in physicality, running the ball, right? Campbell came from the Saints with that big hulking offensive line, has the Parcells background. So that's why I went with that with Detroit. But yeah, that number 5 pick is interesting. It definitely is. I was disappointed yesterday to see Peter King had Jamar Chase there too. I thought I was going to be kind of like, you know, rare that way. But I've heard that in the Bengals organization, this is a real discussion between these two right here. And I won't lie, I was a guy that was a week ago, 10 days ago, going, take Penei Sewell, protect Joe Burrow. You know, you're in the AFC North with all those pass rushers, everything like that. That's the right thing to do. But when I had to finally sit down and do my mock draft and play GM of the Bengals, I just came away going, all right, yeah, you could go Penei Sewell and get the receiver the receiver at the top of the second, or you could get a superstar receiver and still get a good O-lineman at the top of the second. And that's where I decided to go, like, wait, a superstar O-lineman doesn't change an offense around, but a superstar wide receiver does. And you can build a good unit as far as an offensive lines together without one being a superstar. And I think that's what swayed me. And I just went, you know what, go ahead, do it. It makes sense. He's too special. He's too explosive. You know, he stayed in shape with what you saw in the pro day. I mean, really, Jamar Chase was the best receiver in last year's draft, like we talked about yesterday. He would have been the best receiver in last year's draft. He would have been drafted before Ruggs, everybody like that. He's got superstar written all over him. I think that's why you can't pass him if you're the Bengals.
And you throw on top of it the idea that Joe Burrow knows him so well.
That's right.
Played with him so well.
Right.
And, you know, last week when we played the comments from Joe Burrow, and he was very non-committal.
Diplomatic.
About Chase versus Sewell at 5, you could interpret that to mean he wasn't stumping for Chase. Maybe he doesn't want Chase. The reality is he's probably said everything he needs to say.
That's right.
Behind the scenes. And they still have to worry a little bit, that maybe the Falcons decide to go Jamar Chase at number 4. You can't let that fire get too far out of control in Cincinnati for Chase, because that could make the Falcons say, well, you know what, we're getting rid of Julio Jones anyway. Yeah. We're ready to give him away. Right. Let's make Jamar Chase, not Kyle Pitts, the next weapon in our offense.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. That would be interesting. And, you know, it does make you think a little bit with Atlanta and the Julio, you know, on the trade talks and everything like that. But I think it makes sense, you know, for the Bengals to make this type of move. Chase, you know, the thing about Chase is really, you know, physically there's just nothing he can't do. He can beat you deep. He plays bigger than his size, 50-50 balls for a guy his size. It's unbelievable how he comes down with it almost every time. And then I think what's really special about him too is he can improve as a route runner, but it doesn't even matter because he gets open because he's so explosive and quick in short areas. And then with the ball in his hands, Mike, that's where he's just a little different than the rest of the group, because he can break tackles, he can break your ankles, he can make you look silly and do all that type of stuff, or just beat you with pure speed. I mean, it was a special connection with him and Joe Burrow, as good as we've ever seen with any in college football. And I think that's why you just can't pass it up if you're the Bengals.
And if they do it, I respect their willingness to forget about the mistake that was made with John Ross 4 years ago, not be scarred by that. 2 different guys, 2 different skill sets,
right.
2 different drafts, 2 different ceilings, 2 different floors. And also quarterback who knows the guy extremely well. And so I'm coming around on that as well, even though it's safer to go with Sewell.
Yeah.
You become a team that is a high-end contender in one of the toughest divisions in football if Jamar Chase has a Randy Moss type of an impact on the NFL next year. First, you got to get Burrow healthy, too, to make that happen. All right, you have a trade, a quarterback-needy team that traded for Sam Darnold trading down to get more picks from the Washington football team, which springs up 11 spots from 19 to get North Dakota State's Trey Lance. That would be something, and that would probably get quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, the current Washington football team starter, to say more than a few F words, not football team or Fitzpatrick.
Right, you're right. Now, Trey Lance being pro-ready, it'd be less threatening for a guy like Fitzpatrick than it would be for like Tua last year and things like that. I would say that. But, yeah, it would be that same sort of situation. Listen, I'm one that I am not a believer that Carolina will take one of these quarterbacks sitting there at number 8. I mean, I look at it and go, wait, they coached Mac Jones in the Senior Bowl, right? There was rumors that they were looking to trade up in the draft a little bit anyways. And then the 49ers trade, and the rumors are it's Mac Jones, and I don't think it's any coincidence that a few days later you see them make a move for Sam Darnold. I think their guys, they feel like is gone. So I think they're going to look to trade out of that spot. And, Washington, of course, has a need there. And I know there's some teams that are hot on Trey Lance and think he can be maybe the next Josh Allen and that type of stuff. And Washington, a team with the need at the position, the proper formula as far as what's there right now. And I just look at Ron Rivera and Scott Turner, the offensive coordinator, and think they have some history with a Trey Lance type of quarterback in Cam Newton. And that could work with the way their team's set up. So that's why I ultimately, kind of pulled the trigger there with that type of trade.
I always root for chaos. You mentioned Mac Jones and how the Panthers were maybe trying to finagle a trade to get him. Maybe that's what put pressure on the 49ers to pull the trigger when they did. The chaos would be the 49ers taking someone other than Jones. And then what are the Panthers?
Yeah, right. If their guy ended up if Mac Jones was their guy and now he's ended up there on them, you're right. That would be pretty interesting. I envision that though. Still, if Mac Jones falls, in my heart of hearts, where okay, let's say the 49ers take Trey Lance, I still don't think Carolina will do it. And I think then when we get to 8 and 9, that's when I would say that's when we see New England maybe make a play for a Mac Jones and get up there and get him. That would be, if that to happen, would be my scenario, like mock draft 2.0 for that scenario there.
Or 7 with the Lions. You can have Matt Patricia call his old boss and try to work on a trade to get the Patriots in position to jump in front of the Panthers just in case.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we talked about it last hour.
Yeah.
Owner's got a big say. In Carolina, owner's got a big say. Mac Jones is there at 8. David Tepper likely saying, why are you even asking me? Of course we're taking Mac Jones. We'll worry about Sam Darnold later. This is part of our plan. We didn't pick up the option on Darnold for a reason. The reason was maybe Mac Jones was going to slip through the cracks and we were going to get him. So that part of it, potentially fascinating. All right, let's take another look at what you have in your mock draft. How about number 11? You do have a Patriots trade up a few spots. Now, Peter King had the Patriots sitting put and taking Devontae Smith. You've got the Patriots jumping up to get his teammate Jalen Waddle.
I do. I mean, again, the Patriots, hey, there's not I think one position I look at on their team right there to just go, oh, man, they need this one guy. I don't think they're going to be in the market for any pass rushers. Might be available there at that area from what they did with Matt Judon. They still got Chase Vinovich on the edge on the other side, and they're not big into pass rushers anyways in the first round a whole lot. So yeah, I look at Jalen Waddle. It's just too special of a football player, and for the offense, they want to run for whoever's the quarterback going into the future. I just think Jalen Waddle is yeah, he can fill that Julian Edelman void of all those underneath option routes, jerk routes, and all those type of things, let alone he's a weapon on top of that. So you got a guy that's a great route runner. He's more slot-oriented, but, man, he's got big-time, big play ability. Yeah, it's one I don't know. I just took a shot in the dark. I could see the Patriots being on the market for one of these Alabama wide receivers.
I got 2 points to make before we slide past this. One, there's some noise out there that the Giants are actually looking receivers, so maybe they would take Waddle under that scenario, which when I heard it, I said, "Oh, they got Kenny Galladay. They got why would they want to?" Just there's some noise out there that maybe receiver is where they're looking at number 11. So we shall see. Another one too. If we can show the 9 through 16 card, something I was told very reliably, and as you get closer and closer to the draft, you have the people you trust, the people you don't trust, the people who kind of fall in the middle. This comes from someone that I trust who has proven over time to have an incredible understanding of how the board is going to fall. Can we look at Sims 9 through 16, please, when we can pull that up? I'm told that when the Cardinals are on the board at 16, if Jalen Waddle is gone, as he is under that estimation, if Patrick Surtain is gone, as he is under your mock draft, if J.C. Horn is gone, as he is under your mock draft, the pick at 16 for the Cardinals will be Tulsa linebacker Zaven Collins. Ooh. Write it down in ink.
Whoa, that's interesting. I mean, listen, they could use somebody in the middle of their defense in general. That's why I got Christian Barrymore, because I came away with them just going, one, they got Isaiah Simmons. He's this ball hawking, going to be around the middle of the field, middle linebacker. Added that with Jordan Hicks, who's there on the roster. But run defense was their issue in Arizona last year. They got to get better at that type of stuff. I'm a big fan of Zaven Collins. That'd be interesting. That really would be. I didn't really think about that match there, but Collins is, as big as he is, athletic as he is, he could do anything as far as that's concerned, and he's got a lot of versatility for that Vance Joseph defense. So that makes sense. I get that.
6'4", 250-pound linebacker. He said not that long ago, guys built like me play edge rusher. There's no comparable. Brian Urlacher is the only real comparable, and that's a high ceiling for this guy, but he played quarterback in high school just like Urlacher did. He's versatile. He's a playmaker, and he's kind of flown under the radar. 16 is his ceiling if those other guys are gone. Surtain, Horn, Waddle. If they're gone, watch Zaven Collins become the next member of the Arizona Cardinals. All right, Justin Fields. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to land? Let's see the next page of the Chris Sims mock draft. He's got 4 quarterbacks gone in the top 10. There's 17 through 24. I think Chris forgot about Justin Fields. Chris, explain yourself.
Well, I got here to this area, right? And let's just leave it here for a minute, with this page on. Okay, so yeah, I got him falling, as you could see with Justin Fields. I got through, the 10s for the most part there, and I couldn't quite find a match. I know the Patriots, some people think that. I don't think Justin Fields is the Patriots type of guy. The Patriots have a keen eye for throwers, and I got to think Justin Fields' issues jump out to them. Then you go to the other teams. All right, Washington, we know they made the trade. The Bears at 20, Mike. Do you think the Bears, that this is where I didn't know, but do you think the Bears have the green light to draft a quarterback right now? I would think they don't at pick 20. Why? So they can put themselves in the same situation that they just did with Mitchell Trubisky, where the next group of guys comes in and has to deal with a quarterback that they didn't pick because the prior regime did that. So that's where I had a hard time thinking that. And then I got to Pittsburgh at 24, Mike, and I decided to go the all-in on one more year with Big Ben type of thing, and they get the center from Alabama. So that's where, on this page here, no Justin Fields. What do you think? Tell me your thoughts.
I think the key in Chicago is Ted Phillips, the president of the team. If he is finally on the hot seat, if he is finally going to be accountable for revolving door of GMs and coaches that haven't gotten them to where they need to be for the past 22 years, then maybe he's got some sway to buy some time for everyone and say, let's go ahead and take a quarterback and let's give these guys, they've been to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years, let's give these guys a chance to groom a quarterback. Let's give Matt Nagy the chance. Let's give Ryan Pace the chance, even though he's the one that took Trubisky trading up to get him. So that to me is the wild card in Chicago. Right. But I agree with you. That's a conversation. You had Washington trade up to 8 to get Trey Lance. That's not something the Bears are going to get the clearance to do because they don't know who's going to be there. Right. And you're essentially agreeing to keep the coach and the GM around for multiple more years if you do something like that. So I just think that once you get to that third page, 17 to 24, that's when you start seeing somebody spring up to get Fields if he's still there. Yeah. That would be my thought.
Right. And then, that gets into, who would that be at the end of the first round? Is it in Atlanta? Is it the Detroit Lions? Something like that, springing up from the start of the second round to jump up there and do that. That's where it gets really interesting. And as you can see here, really there's no quarterback needs with any of the teams 25 through 32, except for the team that's perfectly built right now and has no needs at all and maybe can look to the future. And I always said Justin Fields to the Pittsburgh Steelers would be a great thing for him because he could sit behind Big Ben and all that. Well, I found one that's better. Justin Fields to Tampa Bay and work on mechanics with Brady, a guy that actually knows that type of stuff, and do all that. That's ultimately where I ended up going. I just don't think they would pass him up if he was sitting there.
Now, would there be the same reaction as there was in Green Bay last year if the Buccaneers use a first-round pick on a quarterback? Probably not.
Probably not, right?
Because
yeah.
Brady's got 2 more years.
Right.
He said so.
Yes.
He's got 2 more years.
Right.
And if for some reason he sticks around longer than that, oh, well, Justin, you go ahead and continue to sit on the bench just like Jimmy G did. It's not going to be like it was in 2014. In 2014, it pissed him off when the Patriots used a second-round pick on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he'd understand if Fields makes it all the way to 32 and they say, hey, we got to run a team after you retire, Tom. And if you do only have 2 more years, come on. What do you expect us to do?
Yeah, I think he could get his head around that completely. You're right. It's a totally different scenario from what he was involved with Jimmy G. It's a totally different scenario from Rodgers and Jordan Love. I mean, again, the writing's on the wall. Brady's still really good, but we know he's not a top 5 quarterback in the league or anything like that. That's where it's different from the Rodgers-Green Bay situation. We knew he was a top 5 quarterback, and you're going, wait, what? You're taking a quarterback? And he's got a lot of years left? Like, there's been no talk about the end in sight yet, and we're still drafting a quarterback, huh? That's where that one's weird. So, yeah, again. But, I mean, I'm with you too, Mike. I mean, I guess the reality of the situation is if he gets to, like, 23, 24 to that area and nobody's drafted him, then I do think it becomes a little bit of that conversation of, okay, what team maybe in the top 10 does look to trade up and get into the end of the first round and steal Justin Fields away. That's going to be interesting. But I envision him falling. I really do, and we'll see if I'm right.
And if you're the Buccaneers and you could get someone's 2022 first-round pick to move out of that 32nd spot and go down, I don't know how many spots, go down 10, 12 spots, that 2022 first-round pick is valuable because it's normal scouting rules,
that's right,
hopefully, next year. How do we get here, though, where, Justin Fields has that great game against Clemson, gets blown up, in the first half, is just throwing dimes in the second half and blows Trevor Lawrence's team off the field? How does he slide all the way to 32? That's just astounding to me.
Well, again, I don't think we would have sat here and thought Lamar Jackson would have slid to 32 either. And I would sit here and tell you Lamar Jackson was a better prospect than Justin Fields. I had no questions about that at all, So I think really, again, there's a lot of talent there with Justin Fields. I think everybody likes the guy, the human being. But I go back to the base thing I said. Some of the issues throwing, I would think, they're scaring teams. There's no doubt. There's very few people in the NFL who really know anything about throwing the football and who can really teach a quarterback the right things to do or how to fix certain things. And I know that's hard for people to believe, but I am telling you, there is very few people in the NFL that have any clue about that stuff. That's why you see a lot of these quarterbacks, they go work with other people. That's because their coach doesn't really tell them that type of stuff, some basics and all of that. And with Justin Fields' issues, they're big for somebody like me who's into the quarterback technique and all of that type of stuff. And even for me, a guy that I know I can teach it and have been doing this for a long time with my dad and my brother and all that, I would worry if I could fix Justin Fields, let alone if I'm not a guy who doesn't know anything about it. Can you correct all those issues? I think that's what's going to scare people or is scaring people about Justin Fields.
What's the main thing that needs to be fixed?
The biggest thing is it's really, I would say more than anything, the little hitch in his throwing motion. Just like we saw in those clips right there. There's no of that separation all the time with the upper and lower body, Mike. A lot of it is just cock the elbow and then try to make it happen with that. And it leads to errant throws all over the field. It's why even in the pro day, to me, he can't just let it go like the other guys can, where he can just let me throw by 100-mile-per-hour fastball every time, because he's not quite sure where the ball is going to go. So between that elbow and then how big and elongated his step can be to throw the football at times, those two things are concerning. And I got to think those are the things that, other evaluators are seeing as well.
I saw something recently that I kind of brushed past it, but now that you've got Fields making it all the way to the bottom of the round, Bucky Brooks, who does some scouting at NFL.com,
yeah,
he believes the Ravens should get Fields and let Lamar Jackson walk away. Make him the first guy that you say, hey, you know what, long-term contract, sorry, we're fine with 5 years. We're just gonna reload at the quarterback position. That was an eyebrow raiser for me.
It's an interesting thought.
It's going to be a hell of a thing to work out a contract for Lamar Jackson. Number one, he doesn't have an agent. What does he want? And how much of an investment do you make in a guy that, even though he hasn't been injured yet, that style of play at some point could catch up to him. But I've seen that, and I hadn't really paid attention to it. But as
I don't like that
him
right
falling,
there. Yeah,
you got 27 and 31.
Yeah,
and you got the Ravens having two cracks at it. I'm intrigued by what Brooks is saying.
It's an interesting thought. Now here, this is what I don't like about this motion there. And there's a lot of pictures out on the internet to show different positions Justin Fields throws, and I go, you're not going to see top flight throwers be in this position a whole lot. But it's just so elbow oriented, and that's where it gets him in trouble a little bit. The arm becomes floppy. But Mike,
help me understand what it does. I mean, is it he holds it too long and the defensive backs are going to get a jump
One,
on it?
It is a little bit of a jump, and then two, it's just like too much of a moving part to where it just hinges on the elbow, and you wouldn't see that disconnect maybe with a Brady or a Rodgers or anything like that. They don't get it up to here and then just let the arm flop. It all comes together as one and connected to their body. Fields' arm almost acts like an independent contractor at times. And that would be like when we say, hey, he's throwing all arm. Yeah, there's too many throws where he throws it all arm. And that's what makes him a really less than average short ball thrower, because there is no technique involved. He tries to figure, I'm going to throw it short and soft. Well, let me make my motion long and soft. And that's not really the proper thought either. It leads to a lot of errant throws all over the place that way. So that's the big issue with it, Mike. And Mike, that thought about Bucky Brooks, like, it got me intrigued, actually. If you're going to get a running quarterback and play that style of football, you almost view him as a running back to a degree. Do you start to think that way? Like, hey, we'll get the next running quarterback in here and continue to play this style of play. We don't think this quarterback can run and do this all forever. It's an interesting thought, nonetheless. I don't think they'll have the guts to do it, but it might be something like a few years from now somebody finally does.
And have him at the bottom of round one, too, where you get a much lower contract than if you take a top five guy. One last thing on the Justin Fields throwing motion, and I think I know the answer to this, but there may be some people who are confused, because we praise Patrick Mahomes for being all over the place.
Right. It's different, though. It's different.
He makes it work. He's accurate.
Well, he doesn't let his arm get to this position and then just let it be like this, right? He's like this. But when it comes to throwing, it all comes together with his body, right? It all comes there together. Where Fields, it's here, and then it's cock the elbow, and then go gadget arm, right? And that's where, Mahomes has mastered the perfect technique, and now that allows him to go, wait, I got it. I'm the man. I've already I perfected the driver down the middle of the fairway. Now I'm going to work on, draws and cutting the ball and doing those type of stuff to where he can, do whatever he wants. And that's what I mean by the sidearm stuff and the awkward deliveries and all that, if that's a good analogy.
$100 says you slice it into the woods. All right. I was watching Caddyshack the other day.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.